There are some mistakes you can apologize for, and then there are mistakes that steal entire lives. I made one of those. My name is Margaret Chen, and 30 years ago, I did something unforgivable. I was a night shift nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, young, exhausted, and drowning in chaos. 2 babies were born that night. Both boys, both healthy, both beautiful. And I switched them. Not by accident, on purpose. For 30 years, I carried this secret like a stone in my chest. I watched from the shadows as 2 families raised each other's sons. I saw the confusion, the questions, the little moments where something didn't quite fit, and I said nothing. But silence has a price. It grows heavier with every passing year. It suffocates you in the quiet moments. It whispers to you in the dark. You are a thief. You are a coward. You are the reason their lives are a lie. Now I am 62 years old. My hands shake when I pour my coffee. My heart skips beats that remind me time is running out. And I have finally decided to do what I should have done 3 decades ago. I am going to tell them the truth. I am going to ask for forgiveness. I don't know if they will give it to me. I don't know if I even deserve it. But I cannot die with this secret. I cannot let them live one more day without knowing who they really are. This is my story. This is my confession. This is my last chance at redemption.
30 years ago, I was a different person. I was 28, fresh out of nursing school, full of idealism and exhaustion. I worked the night shift at St. Catherine's Hospital in a small town called Maplewood. It wasn't a big hospital, just 3 floors, 1 maternity ward, and a staff that was always too small for the workload. But I loved it. I loved holding newborns, watching their tiny fingers curl around mine. I loved the way mothers cried when they first saw their babies. I loved the hope in the air, the feeling that every birth was a new beginning. But that night, July 14th, 1995, everything changed. It was a stormy night, the kind where the rain hammered against the windows and the thunder shook the walls. We were short-staffed. 2 nurses had called in sick, and Dr. Patel was the only doctor on duty. The maternity ward was chaos. 2 women went into labor at almost the same time. The first was Caroline Evans. She was 25, a schoolteacher, married to a carpenter named David. They had tried for years to have a baby. This was their miracle. Caroline was nervous, gripping David's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. But she was glowing. She was ready. The second was Monica Shaw. She was 32, a lawyer, sharp and composed even in labor. Her husband, Richard, was a businessman, wealthy, confident, the kind of man who wore expensive watches and spoke in commands. Monica didn't smile much. She was focused, determined, treating childbirth like a transaction she needed to complete successfully. Both women gave birth within an hour of each other. Both had boys, both healthy, both perfect. Caroline's baby had a small birthmark on her left shoulder, a faint crescent-shaped mark. Monica's had none. I remember thinking how different they looked. Caroline's baby had soft brown hair and delicate features. Monica's baby had thick black hair and a strong jawline, even as a newborn. I cleaned them, weighed them, wrapped them in blue blankets, and then I made my decision. I need you to understand something. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because I thought I was saving a life. You see, Richard Shaw was not a good man. I had seen him before, on previous visits during Monica's pregnancy. He was controlling, dismissive, cold. He spoke to Monica like she was an employee, not his wife. He spoke to the nurses like we were servants. And that night, when his son was born, he looked at the baby with something that made my stomach turn. Disappointment. "He's too small," Richard said, frowning. "Are you sure he's healthy?" Monica, exhausted and pale, looked up at him with hollow eyes. The doctor said he's fine. Fine isn't good enough, Richard muttered. I wanted a strong son, a Shaw, not this. I felt something crack inside me. And then I looked over at Caroline and David. They were crying, holding their baby like it was made of gold. David kissed Caroline's forehead. He's perfect, he whispered. He's everything. Caroline smiled through her tears. We're going to give him the best life. 2 families, 2 babies. One would grow up in warmth and love. The other would grow up under the cold scrutiny of a man who already saw his newborn son as a failure. And I thought, what if I could change that? What if I could give Monica's baby the life he deserved? What if I could give Caroline's baby to a family that had everything? It was insane. It was wrong. But in that moment, exhausted and emotional, I convinced myself it was merciful. I waited until both families were asleep. I went into the nursery, my heart pounding so hard I thought I would collapse. I looked at the 2 babies side by side in their plastic bassinets. Caroline's baby with the birthmark, Monica's baby without. I switched their name tags. I switched their blankets. I switched their lives. And then I walked away. For weeks, I told myself I had done the right thing. I watched Caroline and David take home Monica's baby. They named him Ethan. They held him like he was the most precious thing in the world. I watched Monica and Richard take home Caroline's baby. They named him Benjamin. Richard barely looked at him. And I told myself, Ethan is better off. Benjamin will survive. You saved them both. But the guilt didn't wait long. It started as a whisper. Then it became a scream.
The years passed. I left St. Catherine's Hospital a year after the swap. I couldn't stay. Every time I walked past the maternity ward, I felt like I was suffocating. I moved to another city, took a job at a clinic, tried to rebuild my life, but I couldn't escape them. I checked on them, not in person, never in person, but I found ways: social media, public records, mutual acquaintances. I became a ghost, haunting their lives from a distance. Ethan Evans grew up loved. He was a gentle boy, always smiling, always kind. Caroline and David adored him. They took him to Little League games, family vacations, Sunday dinners. He wasn't particularly athletic or brilliant, but he was happy. He was safe. But there were small things that didn't fit. Ethan didn't look like David. Everyone said it. He must have his mother's genes, people would joke. But even Caroline would sometimes stare at Ethan with a question in her eyes, a question she never spoke aloud. And then there was Benjamin Shaw. He grew up in a house that felt like a museum. Everything was expensive. Nothing was warm. Richard pushed him relentlessly. Private schools, tutors, sports teams. Benjamin excelled. He was smart, driven, focused, but he was also lonely. Monica tried. I could see it in the photos. She would smile at Benjamin, put her hand on his shoulder, but there was always a distance, a gap she couldn't explain. And Richard treated Benjamin like a project that was never quite good enough. I watched all of this from the shadows, and the guilt grew. When Ethan turned 18, he applied for a scholarship to college. As part of the application, he needed a copy of his birth certificate. Caroline went to the hospital to request it. And that's when the first crack appeared. The birth certificate listed his blood type as O negative. Caroline was A positive. David was B positive. It was genetically impossible for Ethan to be O negative. Caroline didn't understand at first. She thought it was a clerical error. She called the hospital, asked them to check their records. They insisted the information was correct. David suggested they do a DNA test. Just to be sure, he said. Caroline agreed. The results came back 2 weeks later. Ethan was not their biological son. I found out through a friend of a friend. The news spread through Maplewood like wildfire. Did you hear about the Evans family? Their son isn't theirs. The hospital made a mistake. I felt like the ground was collapsing beneath me. But it wasn't a mistake. It was me.
and now the truth was clawing its way to the surface. Caroline and David were devastated. They contacted St. Catherine's Hospital, demanding answers. The hospital launched an investigation. They reviewed records, interviewed staff, searched for errors. They found nothing conclusive, but they found something else. Another family had given birth the same night, Monica and Richard Shaw. The hospital contacted them. At first, the Shaws refused to believe it. Richard was furious. "This is absurd," he said. "There's no way Benjamin isn't mine." But Monica was quiet. She agreed to a DNA test. The results confirmed it. Benjamin was not their biological son. Ethan was. The two families met for the first time at the hospital. I wasn't there, but I heard about it. I heard how Caroline cried, how David sat in stunned silence, how Richard demanded answers, threatened lawsuits, accused everyone in sight. And I heard how Monica looked at Ethan, the boy who was her biological son, and didn't know what to feel. Ethan and Benjamin were 18 years old. They had lived entire lives as different people, and now they were being told everything they knew was a lie. Ethan didn't understand. "I don't care about blood," he said. "Caroline and David are my parents. That's not going to change." But Caroline was unraveling. "What if we missed something?" she whispered to David. "What if we loved him wrong because we didn't know who he really was?" David held her. "We loved him right. That's all that matters." But the doubt was there now, and it was growing. Benjamin, meanwhile, was angry. "So you're telling me I've been living a lie?" he said to Monica and Richard, "that everything I am is based on a mistake?" Richard's jaw tightened. "We'll fix this. We'll find out who's responsible." But Monica said nothing. She just looked at Benjamin, the boy she had raised, and wondered if she had ever truly known him at all. The investigation intensified. The hospital brought in lawyers, forensic analysts, anyone who could help them piece together what had happened. They interviewed every nurse and doctor who had been on duty that night, and eventually they came to me. I had moved cities. I had changed my life, but my name was still in the records. I had been the night shift nurse in the maternity ward on July 14th, 1995. They called me in for questioning. I sat in a sterile conference room facing two lawyers and a hospital administrator. "Ms. Chen," one of the lawyers said, "do you remember the night of July 14th, 1995? I nodded. "Do you remember the Evans and Shaw families?" I nodded again. "Do you have any knowledge of how the babies might have been switched?" And there it was, the moment I had been dreading for 30 years. I could have lied. I could have said I didn't remember, that I had no idea, that it must have been someone else. But I was so tired. Tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of carrying the weight of what I had done. So I told them the truth. "I switched them," I said. The room went silent. "I'm sorry," I continued, my voice shaking. "I switched them on purpose. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was saving them." The lawyer stared at me. You did this intentionally?" "Yes." "Why?" And I told them. I told them about Richard's coldness, about Caroline's warmth, about my exhaustion, my fear, my misguided belief that I could fix something by breaking everything. When I finished, the silence was unbearable. "Ms. Chen," the administrator said slowly, "do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" I nodded. "You destroyed two families." I know. "You stole their lives." I know. "And you said nothing for 30 years. I know." The lawyer leaned forward. "You will face legal consequences for this. You will likely go to prison. Your nursing license will be revoked. Your life as you know it is over." I nodded. "I know." But I wasn't done. I had one more thing to do. I had to face them. I had to face Caroline and David, Monica and Richard, Ethan and Benjamin. I had to look them in the eyes and ask for forgiveness, even though I knew I didn't deserve it. The meeting was arranged at St. Catherine's Hospital. I walked into the conference room, my legs trembling. Caroline and David were there, Monica and Richard, Ethan and Benjamin, 6 people whose lives I had destroyed. They all turned to look at me. Caroline's eyes were red from crying. David looked hollow. Monica was stiff, composed, but her hands were shaking. Richard looked like he wanted to kill me. Ethan looked confused. Benjamin looked furious. I sat down, and I began to speak. "My name is Margaret Chen," I said, "and I am the reason your lives were stolen." I told them everything. I told them about that night, about the storm, the chaos, the exhaustion, about Richard's coldness and Caroline's warmth, about the moment I decided to switch the babies. I told them I thought I was being merciful. I told them I was wrong. "I have spent 30 years living with this guilt," I said, my voice breaking, "and I know that nothing I say can undo what I've done. I know that no apology will ever be enough, but I need you to know that I am sorry. I am so, so sorry." Silence. And then Caroline spoke. "You thought you were saving them?" she whispered. "Yes. You thought you had the right to decide who deserved which child? I didn't think of it that way. But that's what you did." Her voice rose. "You played God with our lives. You took my son from me. You gave me someone else's child. And you think an apology fixes that?" I shook my head. "No, I don't." David spoke next, his voice low and steady. "I don't care about your reasons. I don't care about your guilt. You stole 18 years from us, 18 years where we didn't know our own son." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "You should rot in prison for this." Monica said nothing. Ethan looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you do this to us?" And I had no answer. But then Benjamin spoke. "I want to know something," he said, his voice cold. "Did it work?" I looked at him, confused. "Your plan, did it work? Did you save us?" I hesitated. "I don't know." "I do." Benjamin stood up. "I didn't save me. You condemned me. I spent my entire childhood wondering why my father hated me, wondering why I was never good enough. And now I know it's because I wasn't his." He turned to Richard. "You never loved me, did you?" Richard's face was stone. Benjamin laughed bitterly. "And you?" he said, pointing at me. "You thought you were a hero, but you're just a coward who ruined 6 lives because you thought you knew better." He walked out. The days that followed were a blur. I was arrested, charged with criminal negligence, fraud, emotional harm. The media picked up the story. Nurse swaps babies on purpose, families destroyed. I became a monster in the public eye. And maybe I was. But something else happened too. Caroline and Monica met, without the lawyers, without the husbands, just the 2 of them. They sat in a quiet cafe, 2 women who had both lost and gained sons they never knew. "I don't know how to feel," Caroline admitted. "I love Ethan, he's my son, but he's also yours." Monica nodded. "And Benjamin is yours, but I raised him." "Do we trade them back?" Caroline asked, her voice breaking. "Do we try to undo what she did?" Monica shook her head. "I don't think we can. They're 18. They have their own lives, their own identities. We can't just reset them." Caroline wiped her eyes. "Then what do we do?" "I don't know," whispered Monica, "but maybe we start by letting them choose." Ethan and Benjamin met. They sat across from each other in a park, 2 strangers who shared blood but not history. "This is weird," Ethan said. "Yeah," Benjamin agreed. "I don't feel like your brother." "Me neither." They were quiet for a long time. Then Ethan spoke. "I don't want to leave my parents. Caroline and David, they're my family. I don't care about DNA. Benjamin nodded. I get that. But I also want to know you, Ethan said. I want to know where I came from. I want to know Monica. And I want to know Caroline and David, admitted Benjamin. I want to know what it's like to have parents who actually love you. They looked at each other, and for the first time, they smiled. Maybe we don't have to choose. Maybe we can have both.
I stood in the courtroom, waiting for my sentence. The judge looked at me with cold eyes. Margaret Chen, she said, you have committed an unthinkable act. You have caused immeasurable harm to 2 families. You will serve 3 years in prison, followed by probation. Your nursing license is permanently revoked. I nodded. Do you have anything to say? I looked at the families in the gallery. Caroline and David, Monica and Richard, Ethan and Benjamin. I am sorry, I said, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for what I did. The judge banged her gavel. It was over, but the families weren't done. Over the next few years, something unexpected happened. Ethan and Benjamin became friends. Not brothers, not quite, but something close. Caroline and Monica built a tentative relationship. They shared photos, stories, memories. David and Richard barely spoke. Some wounds were too deep. But the boys, Ethan and Benjamin, they found a way forward. Ethan stayed with Caroline and David. Benjamin stayed with Monica. But they visited each other. They learned about each other. They built something new. And slowly, the families began to heal. I am sitting in my cell now, writing this confession. I will be released in a few months. I don't know what kind of life waits for me. I don't know if I will ever be forgiven. But I have learned something. You cannot play God with people's lives. You cannot decide what is best for someone else, no matter how good your intentions are. Love is not about blood. It is not about who you were born to. It is about who chooses to stay, who chooses to fight for you, who chooses to see you for who you truly are. I stole that from 2 families, but somehow they found it anyway. Caroline and David loved Ethan even after they knew the truth. Monica learned to love Benjamin, even though he wasn't hers by blood. And Ethan and Benjamin, they chose each other. They chose to build bridges instead of walls. They chose forgiveness over bitterness. They chose love. If you are reading this and you are carrying a secret that eats at you every day, I want you to know something. The truth will always come out. And when it does, the longer you waited, the worse it will be. But it is never too late to do the right thing. It is never too late to ask for forgiveness. You may not receive it. You may not deserve it. But you owe it to the people you hurt to try. I destroyed 2 families, but they rebuilt themselves. And maybe, just maybe, that is the real miracle. Not that I was forgiven, but that they found a way to forgive each other and to forgive themselves. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's spread stories that remind us of the power of truth, forgiveness, and love. Drop a comment below and tell me, could you forgive someone who stole 30 years of your life? Thank you for reading. Until next time.